Well, I guess it's time to ask the big question, and that is why. Why do we create databases? Why do we input tons of data into tables in a database? Well, usually it's to stay organized. A database is an organized collection of information, and by entering data into our database, we can stay organized. But usually what happens down the road is we want to extract some of that information and display it in a meaningful format. That's where reports come in. And there are a number of different ways to create reports in Microsoft Access 2007. We're going to look at a few different ways to do that in this chapter. We're also going to look at ways to modify the design and add some cool features like calculations and so on to our reports. If you look up at the title bar at the top, I've opened up a database called Acme Report A. You'll find that in the Lesson 8 folder of your exercise files if you've got them. Go ahead and open that one up. And you'll notice on the left-hand side in the navigation pane, I've got customers, orders, and products, tables and forms for each of them. Now, I can base a report on a table or a query. I currently don't have any queries showing up here, so keep that in mind as we create our first report, which is going to be based on a typical scenario where we have customers and we want to get a nice list of our customers in alphabetical order with their phone numbers. Yes, we're going to create a phone list. So the keyword there is create. We go up to the create tab on the ribbon, and there is a report section over here. And you'll see there's different ways to create a report. Here we can do it from scratch, and this is just creating a basic report based on a table or a query. We can start from scratch for real here with a blank one. We can use the report wizard to give us a head start. That's what we're going to do in a second. We can even create labels, and we'll do that later on as well. The report design button is what we're going to use to go back into an existing report and modify the design. So let's start with the report wizard. We'll give it a click, and the report wizard dialog box starts up. Now, the customers table is currently highlighted over here in the navigation pane, and that's why it shows up here under tables and queries. But if I needed to choose from a different table, I click the drop down, choose whatever table or query that I might have in this database to base my report on. I'm going to select customers. That displays the customer fields down below. So let's think about this. We want an alphabetical phone list. It's probably going to be by last name. So let's start with the last name field. We'll click on it. The double arrow would add all of our fields. We don't want all of our fields, just a few. So we'll use the single arrow button. There's the last name. Let's add the first name and the phone number. So we click phone, and the single arrow moves it over. So we've selected our fields. Now let's move on to the next step in the wizard. Clicking next takes us to the next question, and that is, do we want to do any grouping? In other words, if we've got a number of customers with the same last name, do we want them all grouped together and then maybe sorted by their first name? Well, we could do that. Let's click on last name if it's not selected and click the single arrow to move it over, and you can see what happens here in my display pane. I've got last name here, and then the first name and phone number would show up underneath. Alright, if I wanted to, I could group on any of the fields that show up here. Grouping options is also available down at the bottom. And when I click on that, you can see I'm asked for what grouping intervals do I want for the group level fields. Right now, last name is selected and the grouping intervals are normal. If I wanted to do it by the first two initial letters, I could do that and click OK. So at least I'm going to see the last name here next to the first name, and it's going to be grouped by the first two letters in the last name. Let's click next. Now we get to choose what sort order we're going to use for the detail record. So we already know that we're grouping by last name. When I click this drop down, the first two initials are going to be used for the grouping from the last name. Inside of that, we want to sort by last name. We'll go ascending order. And then for all of those with the same last name, maybe we should sort by the first name. So we'll do that. And that's all we need for this particular screen. Let's move on to the next one. Clicking next takes us to a question where we're asked, how would we like to lay out our report? And right now, stepped is selected. You can see it over here. As I click on these options for layout, I see a quick display on the left of what it might look like. I can go portrait or landscape. I'm going to stay with portrait, and I'm going to stay with stepped. Notice down below this is checked as well. The fields will automatically be adjusted so that all of the contents of the field and those fields will fit on the page. I'll click next. And now I get to choose a style. For me, flow is selected right now. You may have something different selected. It depends if you've created any reports in the past. But clicking any of these will give you a quick preview of what that might look like. I'm going to go with Metro, and I'm going to click Next. All right, what do we want to call this report? Customers is the default because it's based on the customers table. I'm going to leave it at customers, but I'm going to add customers phone list to the end. And you can see now when I hit finish, I'm going to be previewing the report. If I want to go straight to the report's design, I could select this radio button. But I want to see what it looks like, so I'm going to leave that selected and click finish. So there's my phone list. You can see the first two initials from the last name. Here's a bunch of last names that are the same. They are sorted in ascending order by first name. And there's the phone numbers. So a nice clean list of my customers and their phone numbers. So that was easy. How do we go back now and modify the design of a report? That's what we're going to look at in the next lesson.